After being reborn, I deliberately avoided all contact with Ji Yanli. When he was bullied by dandies at the academy, I didn't step forward to stop them. When he topped the imperial examinations and paraded through the streets on horseback as the new Zhuang Yuan, I declined my girlfriend's invitation to watch the spectacle, choosing instead to stay home and embroider. When he took his widowed sister-in-law to a banquet and was mocked for it, I made no move to defend them. In my past life, he handed over my only child to be raised by that widowed sister-in-law of his. From then on, the boy refused to call me mother, addressing me coldly by my full name, Song Ningwen. When he grew up, he even lectured me on being virtuous and polite, urging me to let Ji Yanli take 2 wives to continue both his own and his late brother's family lines. But I never expected that, just like in my past life, Ji Yanli would reject all the highborn families trying to marry their daughters to him right after his triumph in the exams, and then come to my family to propose marriage. At that moment, it hit me like a bolt of lightning. Ji Yanli must have been reborn too. I was still reeling from the shock when father sent a servant to summon me to the flower hall to meet Ji Yanli. Earlier that day, when I had chosen not to go watch the Zhuang Yuan's parade, Luo Shu had rushed over to gush to me, "Wanwan, you missed out on something amazing. That top scholar Ji is the youngest Zhuang Yuan in history, and he's so handsome too." When he rode past the restaurant where I was watching, he glanced over at me several times. My heart was pounding so fast. Too bad I'm already betrothed. If you'd been there, it might have been the start of a beautiful romance. I didn't even look up, my hands busy stitching a pair of knee pads. The northern border was bitterly cold. I needed to stuff plenty of cotton wool inside to keep them warm. Seeing that I wasn't responding, Luo Shu looked a little awkward. "I'm sorry, Wanwan, I shouldn't have joked like that." Only then did I lift my head and smile at her. Luo Shu quickly came over to link her arm through mine. Don't get me wrong, though. Even though Zhuang Yuan Ji is amazing, that widowed sister-in-law of his is no easy character to deal with. My mother took me to Princess Chang's spring banquet yesterday, and she was there too, tagging along with Ji Yanli like she was his official wife. Several noble ladies couldn't stand the sight of her. I couldn't blame Luo Shu for thinking that the problem lay with the sister-in-law, not Ji Yanli. In my past life, I never suspected it either. I never imagined that Ji Yanli, a man who had always been so strict about following rules and etiquette that he refused even to take a concubine, would have an illicit relationship with his widowed sister-in-law. Jiang Yingxue. If Jiang Yingxue hadn't drunk too much contraceptive tea and rendered herself unable to bear children, Ji Yanli would probably never have let me give birth to our son, Ji Jingyang. It wasn't until I was on my deathbed that I heard Jiang Yingxue weeping as she said to him, "Yanli, the thought that after you die, you'll end up buried with Song Ningwen for eternity makes me wish I could die right now." Ji Yanli's voice sounded strained as he replied, "The joint burial tomb I built with her is just for show. When the time comes, I'll tell Jingyang to bury me with you instead." Even Ji Jingyang, the son I had carried for 10 months and given birth to after a difficult labor, was quick to chime in, eager to please. "Mother, how can you doubt me? When father passes away, I'll go to the mass grave and dig up a random corpse to bury with Song Ningwen." Jiang Yingxue finally stopped crying and smiled through her tears, patting his cheek affectionately. "You're not a waste of my love and care, after all." I was so furious that my head was buzzing, but as my consciousness faded away, I couldn't even utter a single word to accuse them. I had been married to Ji Yanli for an entire lifetime. We'd had our share of quarrels and disagreements, but on the whole, we'd treated each other with respect and affection. I had originally only resented him for being so obsessed with ensuring his late brother's line didn't die out that he wanted to adopt our son to his sister-in-law, a decision that had broken my heart when Jingyang turned against me. But I never thought that he and Jiang Yingxue had been carrying on behind my back all along. I, his legal wife, was nothing more than a pretty decoration he put on display for the world to see. For an entire lifetime, he and Jiang Yingxue had made me their fool. And now he was here, proposing to me again. No doubt he'd looked around and decided that I was still the easiest to deceive. My father was the headmaster of the academy. He had always admired hardworking, poor scholars like Ji Yanli. When I followed my maid to the flower hall, father smiled warmly and said, "Yanli, this is my daughter Ningwen. She's read a few books too." Ji Yanli's eyes were blazing with intense emotion as he looked at me. "Miss Song." I averted my gaze, refusing to meet his eyes, and curtsied respectfully. "Father, Mrs. Luo invited me to pray to Buddha today. Her carriage is already waiting at the gate." Mrs. Luo was my mother's closest friend from her maiden days. She had married far away to the northern border. She had only returned to the capital recently to handle her daughter Luo Shu's marriage arrangements. Her husband was General Luo, a trusted confidant of the emperor. Everyone in the capital gave her face, as expected. Father didn't press me further when he heard that. I accompanied Mrs. Luo to Dazhao Temple and lit an eternal lamp for my late mother. Mrs. Luo looked at me, her eyes growing red with emotion. "Wanwan, even though your mother is no longer with us, I still remember the betrothal we agreed on when we were girls, to marry our children to each other. If you don't mind the bitter cold of the northern border, I'll ask the general to go to the Song mansion to propose marriage next month when he returns to the capital to report on his duties. From now on, I'll treat you like my own daughter." I took a pair of thick, padded knee pads out of the satchel I was carrying. Before mother passed away, she told me about this betrothal too. "I'm deeply grateful that you and brother Luo don't look down on me. Of course I'm willing to go to the northern border. I sewed these knee pads myself, please pass them on to him, Aunt Luo." Mrs. Luo was overjoyed. "I knew you were a thoughtful girl. The northern border is sparsely populated, and the Luo family has never believed in taking concubines. My Xiao may not be fond of reading, but he understands that a virtuous wife brings fewer troubles and a harmonious family leads to prosperity. He'll never treat you badly." I smiled softly, pressing my lips together. In my past life, Mrs. Luo had said exactly the same thing to me here, at this very spot, when she brought up the betrothal. But back then, my heart was filled only with thoughts of Ji Yanli. Just a few days earlier, in fact, I had thrown a sachet I'd embroidered myself down to him as he rode past the restaurant during the Zhuangyuan parade right in front of Luo Shu. Ji Yanli had caught the sachet and looked up at me with a smile, his eyes saying clearly, "Wanwan, wait for me to propose." So when Mrs. Luo offered me this kind gesture, I had only blushed and said, "Marriage is a major decision. It's up to my father to decide." By the time General Luo returned to the capital to propose, father had already accepted Ji Yanli's marriage offer. Though Mrs. Luo was slightly disappointed, she still added a generous dowry to my wedding gifts and even recognized me as her goddaughter. "Wanwan, your godmother has to go back to the northern border now. From now on, Luo Xiao is your elder brother. If you ever suffer any grievances, just send a letter north, I'll be there for you." I had been deeply touched and filled with guilt by her kindness. Later, when the northern border was invaded by foreign enemies and the war dragged on for years, the imperial treasury became strained. I had taken the lead by donating half of my dowry to fund the border troops. This small act of patriotism had made Ji Yanli so angry that he'd refused to speak to me for an entire month. But now that I had been given a second chance at life, I didn't want to let Mrs. Luo's kindness go to waste again. We had just finished talking when Luo Shu returned from watching the eminent monk perform the religious ceremony in the front hall. She held up the prayer beads in her hand excitedly. "These were blessed personally by the eminent monk. They'll definitely ensure a happy marriage for me in the future. Wanwan, you should go get a pair too. Who knows, maybe it'll bring you good luck in love." Luo Shu had grown up in the northern border all her life, unlike the young ladies in the capital. She talked about her betrothal without the slightest trace of shyness or hesitation. Mrs. Luo laughed and pretended to scold her, then turned to me with an encouraging smile. Shua may be a little reckless, but she's right. It's not every day you get a chance to receive blessings from such a revered monk. Wanwan, you should go get a pair too. After everything I'd been through in my past life, I no longer held any hopes for a happy marriage. As long as Luo Xiao treated me with the respect due to a legal wife, I would do my best to be a good wife to him, bear him children, manage the household, and stand by his side. But then I thought of how he had later sacrificed his life defending the northern border in the Great War. Under Mrs. Luo's hopeful gaze, I stood up, resolved to go to the eminent monk and ask for a peace talisman for Luo Xiao. A brave young general who defended his country deserved to live a long and healthy life. But halfway there, I ran into Ji Yanli. He was wearing a long robe of moon-white silk, looking as elegant and refined as an orchid or a jade tree. No wonder he was the Zhuang Yuan that all the young ladies in the capital had thrown fruit at during his parade. But the moment I thought about his sordid affair with Jiang Yingxue, my stomach churned with disgust. As if he hadn't noticed the coldness on my face, Ji Yanli stepped forward and blocked my path. Miss Song, I accompanied my sister-in-law here to pray to Buddha, but the temple is already full, and there are no more private meditation rooms available. Would you be so kind as to take my sister-in-law to Mrs. Luo's private room to rest for a while? No, I refused without a moment's hesitation, my voice cold as ice. To my surprise, Ji Yanli looked overjoyed, as if he just heard the best news in the world. A flicker of unease crossed my heart. I turned sideways and walked around him, determined to get away, but I had only taken a few steps when I heard him call out again, his voice soft and intimate. Ching ching, my footsteps froze. That was the pet name Ji Yanli had given me after we got married in my past life. He really had been reborn too. Seeing me come to a halt, Ji Yanli's voice brimmed with excitement. I knew it, you're back too. Ching ching, father-in-law said he'd ask for your opinion. Once you nod, we can be together again. I turned around, fixing him with a glare tinged with faint anger. Prior to today, we were strangers. Please show some decorum, Lord Ji. A flicker of confusion crossed Ji Yanli's face. After a moment of silence, he shook his head and broke into a confident smile. You can't fool me. You've always been gentle and kind, treating my sister-in-law with the utmost respect. If it weren't for what happened later, if I hadn't insisted on adopting Jingyang to my sister-in-law, you wouldn't have held this grudge against me. Don't worry, this time, I'll keep Jingyang by your side. You'll raise him yourself, personally. Seeing that I still didn't utter a word, Ji Yanli paused, his tone softening even further. My sister-in-law didn't actually come today. I just said that to test you. I froze in place. The man standing before me seemed like a completely different person. In my past life, when I'd cried to him about how Ji Jingyang refused to call me mother and addressed me coldly by my full name Song Ningwen, he hadn't spoken to me like this at all. Back then, he'd worn an impatient scowl. I told you we should adopt Jingyang to my sister-in-law, but you insisted on refusing. Now that he doesn't recognize you as his mother, what's the point of clinging to him? I opened my mouth to speak, but was so choked up that no words came out. Ji Jingyang had barely turned 1 month old when he'd used the excuse of letting me rest well to carry the baby off to Jiang Yingshue's room. If Jiang Yingxue hadn't been stirring up trouble behind my back, how could Ji Jingyang have refused to call me mother? Later on, Ji Jingyang even tried to persuade me. Uncle has no heirs. If you won't let me be adopted by him, then let father take 2 wives to continue both family lines. Marry aunt, please. At the time, I still didn't know about their illicit relationship, let alone that I would never be able to have another child. After thinking it over repeatedly, I finally agreed to the adoption. It wasn't until I was on my deathbed that I found out Jiang Yingxue had long ago bribed the servants to slip sterilization drugs into my food and drink every day. Thinking about all this, I suddenly had no desire to figure out why Ji Yanli had changed his mind. In any case, in this life, I wanted nothing to do with him. I simply smiled at him. Lord Ji, I don't understand what you're talking about. To tell you the truth, I'm already discussing marriage with someone else. When my father said he would ask for my opinion, he was just being polite to you. At my words, the confident, composed smile on Ji Yanli's face suddenly cracked. Who are you discussing marriage with? Ji Yanli asked in a deep, low voice. By the time I died in my past life, he had already climbed to the high position of Minister of War. When he asked this question, his tone carried the faint coercion of someone wielding power. My heart couldn't help but twinge with pain. In my past life, when I took the lead in donating half of my dowry, I had also helped the emperor solve an urgent crisis. At that time, Ji Yanli was the Vice Minister of War. His subsequent promotion to Minister of War was undoubtedly related to this incident, but somehow, Ji Yanli had heard rumors that I had been betrothed to Luo Xiao since childhood. He'd suspected me of having an affair, and had refused to set foot in my room for an entire month. Jiang Yingxue had also spread gossip throughout the mansion, subtly hinting that I was an unfaithful wife. Even Ji Jingyang, who had just learned to talk, would suddenly blurt out at me, Song Ningwen, adulteress. Thankfully, I'd been reborn. These painful memories would never be repeated. I pressed my lips together, my tone turning 3 parts cold. That's my business. It has nothing to do with you. The tense expression on Ji Yanli's face relaxed again, replaced by a calm, confident look that suggested he was holding all the cards. Ching, don't be angry with me. I know I broke your heart. I'll spend this entire lifetime making it up to you. He spoke in that soft, gentle voice, the same way he'd coaxed me into obedience time and time again in my past life. I stared at him silently. It was this very mouth that had lied to me, again and again. But Ji Yanli seemed to think he'd won me over. He reached out to take my hand as naturally as breathing. I quickly pulled my hand behind my back, stumbling several steps backward in alarm. I was about to snap at him angrily when I saw Luo Shu hurrying toward me. I forced myself to calm down, putting on a smile for Luo Shu. Why are you here alone? Where's Aunt Luo? Luo Shu was slightly out of breath as she linked her arm through mine. I realized I still needed to get a peace talisman for my father, so I came to catch up with you. I never thought you'd only gotten this far. Then she glanced at Ji Yanli standing nearby. Aren't you Zhuangyuan Ji? As an unmarried man, pestering a young lady in private isn't exactly something that will make you look good. Ji Yanli frowned. This is a pure and sacred Buddhist temple. Watch your words. Miss Song is the daughter of my mentor, and also my junior fellow student. We just happened to run into each other and exchanged a few greetings. What's wrong with that? Luo Shu snorted coldly and pulled me away. Afraid she'd ask what Ji Yanli and I had been talking about, I quickly changed the subject. You're only getting a talisman for your father. What about your brother? Luo Shu shot me a teasing glance. Isn't that what you're here for? Her look made my face turn bright red. I asked in a voice as soft as a mosquito's buzz. Did Aunt Luo tell you everything? Luo Shu pretended to scowl. You're such a sneak, Song Ningwen, keeping such a big secret from me. Then she saw the guilty look on my face and burst out laughing. All right, my brother's an ice block. It's not easy for him to find a wife. I can't scare you away. Especially not with a certain Zhuangyuan Ji eyeing you like a hungry tiger waiting to pounce. My heart skipped a beat. I glared at her, feigning anger. Stop talking nonsense. Luo Shu pouted. The way Zhuangyuan Ji looks at you is totally not normal. No wonder he turned down Prime Minister Ma's marriage proposal the other day. He's been pining after my future sister-in-law this whole time. Thankfully, Luo Shu hadn't been reborn. I let out a quiet sigh of relief, my tone lightening up. Now that I've agreed to Aunt Luo, I won't have any other thoughts. Stop making things up. Luo Shu smiled and rolled her eyes at me. I don't care, until my brother comes to the capital. I'm going to guard you like a hawk. We chatted and laughed as we walked away. We didn't see Ji Yanli standing there rooted to the spot, his face as dark as storm clouds. Luo Shu led me to the meditation room where the eminent monk was resting. She had no trouble getting the peace talisman she'd prayed for her father, but when it was my turn, the monk studied my face carefully, falling into a long silence. Just as I was about to lose my patience, he finally spoke up. Would the female benefactor be willing to share your birth date with this humble monk? My heart skipped a beat. After hesitating for a moment, I decided I didn't dare lie to such a revered monk. After learning my birth date, he closed his eyes and fell silent again for an even longer time. The air was filled with the calming scent of sandalwood incense, but my heart was pounding faster and faster. Could there be something wrong with my marriage to Luo Xiao? Or had the monk seen through me, realized that I was a reborn soul, an anomaly? Very well, the monk sighed, breaking through my chaotic thoughts. A blessed woman shall not enter a household without fortune. Benefactor, you may go now. I was still in a daze when a young novice monk led me out of the meditation room. The monk had given me the peace talisman, but he refused to explain what he'd meant by a household without fortune. Had he been referring to the Luo family, or the Ji family? If we were talking about worldly blessings and prosperity, in my past life, Ji Yanli had risen to high office and enjoyed great wealth and glory, while Luo Xiao had died young in battle. Was it possible that even in this new life, I was destined to marry Ji Yanli? When I returned home that night, Father told me exactly what I'd been dreading. The emperor wanted to promote scholars from poor backgrounds, and Ji Yanli's future was limitless. He planned to accept Ji Yanli's marriage proposal. Thinking about the monk's prophecy, I lost my composure for the first time since being reborn. I looked my father straight in the eye, my tone resolute. I'd rather die than marry him. Father stared at me in stunned silence. He couldn't understand why I was reacting so violently, but I couldn't tell him the truth, that Ji Yanli, despite his outward appearance of being a man of integrity and virtue, was actually a shameless scoundrel who'd had an affair with his widowed sister-in-law. And I also couldn't tell him that the Luo family would come to propose marriage next month, and that I wanted to marry Luo Xiao. Given Father's rigid, old-fashioned ways, he would definitely think I was shameless for arranging my own marriage behind his back. He would probably even refuse the Luo family's proposal outright. After thinking hard about it, I gritted my teeth and told Father the only excuse I could think of: the Ji family is destitute. I don't want to marry into poverty and suffer a lifetime of hardship. Father was deeply disappointed. He thought I was being shallow and materialistic, lacking foresight and disgracing the noble spirit of a scholar. Desperate, I had no choice but to invoke Mother's last words to stop him. Father, you promised Mother that I would have the final say in who I marry. Father froze, stunned into silence for a long time. Finally, his face turned black with anger, and he stormed off with a flick of his sleeves. But then my stepmother came to try to persuade me. She said the Ji family had a simple household, both of Ji Yanli's parents were already deceased, so if I married him, I wouldn't have to wait on difficult in-laws. It was a rare, excellent marriage opportunity, she claimed, in my past life. When I'd been so angry about Ji Yanli giving our child to Jiang Yingxue that I'd run back to my parents' home, my stepmother had said similar things to me. She told me that Ji Yanli's kindness toward his widowed sister-in-law proved he was a kind-hearted, virtuous man. A man who valued family and righteousness so highly would never betray me, she'd insisted. But now that I'd been reborn, I finally understood her true motives. She was just afraid that if I divorced Ji Yanli, it would ruin her own daughter's chances of making a good marriage match. And now she was urging me to marry Ji Yanli again, most likely because she thought the poor Ji family wouldn't demand a large dowry from us. I hung my head and listened to her ramble on, putting on a show of being tempted by her words. I didn't want her to think I was being stubborn and unreasonable, otherwise she would go complain to father and persuade him to ignore my wishes and force me to agree to the marriage. All I had to do was string her along, buy enough time to wait until next month, when General Luo would come to the capital to propose marriage. At that point, father would find it hard to refuse. Seeing that I seemed hesitant, my stepmother decided to play her trump card. She began taking me and her biological daughter, Song Ningen, to attend banquets and social gatherings every day. At these events, she would subtly drop hints that she was looking for a good marriage match for me. But in the capital, all the decent, respectable families believed in the old saying, never marry the eldest daughter of a deceased mother. Not only were they not interested in me, but they would also subtly steer the conversation toward Song Ningen instead. Only the mothers of those idle, dissolute young masters would take my hand and ask me all sorts of personal questions. I endured all this silently, counting down the days until General Luo would arrive in the capital. But I never could have imagined that I would run into Jiang Yingxue again. 7. It was a flower viewing banquet hosted by Princess Chang, where many marriageable young men and women in the capital were invited. My stepmother accepted the invitation and took Song Ningen and me to the feast. Jiang Yingxue was sitting among a group of noble ladies. The moment she saw me walk in, she put on a look of feigned surprise. Sister Song, why aren't you at home embroidering your dowry? What are you doing at this matchmaking banquet? The hall fell silent instantly. A buzzing noise filled my head, and the anger from my past life surged up again. I wanted to throw caution to the wind and expose her true colors, but I knew it would only make people think I was insane. I had to clench my fists tightly, letting the pain of my nails digging into my palms remind me to stay calm. I took a deep breath, ready to speak up, when Song Ningen suddenly stepped forward and stood in front of me. This invitation was sent by Princess Chang herself. Who do you think you are, daring to turn someone away on her behalf? Jiang Yingshue's face stiffened. She muttered under her breath, my Yanli has already gone to propose marriage. Isn't he good enough for you? At this, all the noble ladies turned their eyes to my stepmother, as if saying, how could you refuse such a wonderful match for her? Truly, a stepmother never cares as much as a birth mother, unable to bear their probing gazes. My stepmother forced a smile. When a daughter is of marriageable age, 100 families come to seek her hand. As parents, we simply want to take our time and choose the very best for her. But as soon as we got home, my stepmother flew into a rage and smashed several teacups to pieces. When father returned that evening, she put on a tearful show, hinting at every turn that I was being unreasonable, rejecting a talented Zhuang Yuan for a bunch of dissolute playboys. If I really ended up with a bad marriage, she wailed, how would she ever hold her head up in society again? Father fell silent for a long time, then finally made up his mind. Wanwan, last time I asked you to meet Yanli, you were in such a hurry to go pray to Buddha that you left early. Tomorrow, I'll ask him to come again. You two should have a proper talk. If there are no issues, we'll proceed to match your birth charts. I stared at father in stunned silence. My heart filled with unspeakable pain. In the end, mother's dying wish was no match for my stepmother's whispered gossip. 8. Early the next morning, I sent a servant to deliver an invitation to Luo Shu. She had been so busy with her own wedding preparations these days that she hadn't visited me in ages. I had to get her here at once to tell her what was happening, so she could pass the message on to Aunt Luo. The invitation had barely been sent out when father's servant arrived to summon me to the front courtyard. Father and Ji Yanli were sitting in the small pavilion, having just finished a game of chess. When I approached, father gave a few brief instructions to the servants and then left, leaving me alone with Ji Yanli. Two young servants stood at a distance, close enough to keep an eye on us but far enough away that they couldn't hear our conversation. Father had truly gone to a lot of trouble to arrange this private meeting for us. If I hadn't been reborn, I might have actually felt my heart flutter like a young girl's. But now, I simply stood as far away from him as possible, my voice cold as ice. No matter what you say, I will never marry you. Ji Yanli froze for a moment, a hint of suppressed anger creeping into his tone. So who are you going to marry? That Luo boy who's destined to die young, since we were having a showdown anyway. I no longer bothered to deny that I had been reborn. Yes, I'd rather be a widow than marry you. Ji Yanli spat out 3 sharp goods. His face turned livid as he glared at me. Ingxue was right all along. You did have an affair with that short-lived fool, that's why you donated half your dowry to his army so generously. At this point, I no longer cared about defending myself. Across 2 lifetimes, I had never even laid eyes on Luo Xiao, so I just let out a sneering laugh. What do you have to compare to him? He's a hero who defends his country and protects his people. And you? I fixed my gaze on the rage simmering in his eyes, my voice growing colder with every word. You're nothing but a beast who committed adultery with his own widowed sister-in-law. Ji Yanli staggered back as if struck by lightning, his entire body trembling. The most shameful, hidden secret of his heart had been laid bare for me to see. Panic and shame flooded his eyes. After a long while, he finally managed to speak, his voice strained and hoarse. It's not what you think. I stared at him coldly, giving him no room to evade the truth. You go around mouthing empty words about honoring your late brother and taking care of his widow. If your brother knew you've been taking care of his wife in your bed, do you think he'd ever be able to rest in peace in the afterlife? But I suppose you don't care about that, Lord Ji, not when you're already planning to be buried with your widowed sister-in-law. In the underworld, you 2 brothers can even fight over her again. How romantic. In my past life, I had always clung to my upbringing and good manners. Even when Jiang Ingxue had driven me to tears, I could never bring myself to say a single cruel word to her face. Now, saying all these harsh truths out loud felt incredibly liberating. But Ji Yanli was clutching the edge of the table, his legs shaking so badly he could barely stand. He opened his mouth several times, trying to speak, but no words came out. Suddenly, I felt a wave of profound boredom wash over me. This man was nothing but a hollow shell, beautiful on the outside, rotten to the core on the inside. I had fought so hard to get a second chance at life. I refused to waste another moment of it on him and Jiang Ingxue. Let the resentment and hatred end here and now. Ji Yanli, I called out to him, my voice calm and steady. His head shot up, a flicker of hope igniting in his eyes as he looked at me. If you have even an ounce of conscience left in that cold heart of yours, let us go our separate ways in this life. Let us both find our own peace. The light in Ji Yanli's eyes dimmed. Ching, I can't do that. I owe you everything from our past life. I'll spend this entire lifetime making it up to you. He turned to leave, his shoulders slumping with a quiet loneliness, but his voice was filled with unshakable resolve. I will marry you, Ching, no matter what it takes. 9. The look in Ji Yanli's eyes as he left was so obsessive, so unhinged, it sent a chill down my spine. I couldn't understand it, and it filled me with a deep sense of unease. In my past life, he had never cared about me this much. So why, this time around, was he so determined to make me his wife, his pretty, meaningless decoration? He said he owed me, but I didn't believe for a second that he had truly repented. Lost in these thoughts, I walked back to my room, only to be overjoyed to find Luo Shu already waiting for me inside. I had just been thinking that if Ji Yanli was going to be this stubborn, and if Luo Shu hadn't come today, I would have had no choice but to go to father and threaten to take my own life, anything to buy a little more time. Thankfully, the Luo family never let me down. I told her everything that had happened, from start to finish, Then I took her hands in mine, my voice earnest and sincere. I have no more shame left to hide. Please ask Aunt Luo to come to my house as soon as possible to bring up the childhood betrothal we had arranged. Luo Shu laughed and pinched my cheek playfully. You were always destined to be my sister-in-law. My father's personal guards arrived last night with a message, he'll be home tonight. I let out a long, relieved breath. Thank goodness. Luo Shu pointed to her own nose, pretending to be offended. You should be thanking me. I left my mother all alone to handle the preparations for my father's homecoming, just to rush over here to see my future sister-in-law. We burst into laughter, the tension in the air finally lifting, outside the window. The sky had cleared after the rain, the sun shining brightly once more. I knew, deep in my heart, that this life would be different. I would never repeat the mistakes of my past. 10. It wasn't long before I became officially betrothed to Luo Xiao. Aunt Luo handled everything with remarkable grace and efficiency. She not only sent General Luo to come to the Song Mansion in person, accompanied by Luo Xiao himself, to formally propose marriage. She also invited Princess Chang to act as our official matchmaker. Coupled with the Luo family's long-standing reputation for loyalty and integrity in the imperial court, Father was absolutely delighted, agreeing to the marriage without a moment's hesitation. Although my stepmother was a little sore about having to prepare a generous dowry for me, she quickly consoled herself with the thought that my marriage to the prestigious Luo family would also improve her own daughter Song Ninggen's marriage prospects. In the end, she threw herself into helping with the wedding preparations with great enthusiasm. Aunt Luo then invited me to stay at Dazhao Temple for a few days, partly to hold a Buddhist ceremony for my mother, to tell her the good news of my upcoming marriage, and partly to give Luo Xiao and me a chance to get to know each other better. Luo Xiao was nothing like Ji Yanli. He always dressed in a simple black robe, his sword-like eyebrows framing a pair of bright, starry eyes. His features were sharp and angular, and every movement he made exuded a quiet, confident heroism. He seemed cold and aloof on the surface, but he was actually incredibly thoughtful and attentive. I often caught him stealing glances at me, his ears turning bright red whenever our eyes met. I had thought my heart was as calm and still as an ancient well, that my feelings for the young general would be nothing more than sisterly affection and respect, but whenever I met his warm, dark gaze, my heart would flutter uncontrollably, skipping beats like a nervous schoolgirl's. The days at Dazhao Temple passed in a peaceful, happy blur, and soon it was time for me to leave. As the Luo family were the military commanders of the northern border, they had heavy responsibilities and couldn't stay in the capital for long, so we decided to proceed with the wedding as quickly as possible. As soon as we left the temple, Aunt Luo would begin making the final arrangements, but I couldn't stop thinking about Luo Xiao's tragic fate in my past life, how he would die on the battlefield defending his country. So I decided to visit the eminent monk one last time, to ask him if there was any way to change his destiny. If I could be reborn, then why couldn't Luo Xiao be granted a long and prosperous life? The monk closed his eyes and fell into a long meditation. When he finally spoke, he only gave me 8 words. Karma has been settled, there is no need for worry. My heart leaped with excitement. I pressed him eagerly. Does that mean young General Luo's fate has been changed, that he will live a long life now? But the monk refused to say anything more, simply waving his hand to signal a young novice to show me out. Uneasy and anxious, I walked out of the meditation room. I had just bid farewell to the novice and stepped onto the path when my heart suddenly began to pound violently. A sense of impending danger washing over me. Before I could react, a powerful hand reached out from the shadows and dragged me roughly into the abandoned back hall where temple supplies were stored. 11. The heavy wooden door slammed shut behind us with a loud bang. Ji Yanli stood before me, his eyes bloodshot and wild, his expression utterly deranged. Ching ching. We can start over. Together, I forced myself to stay calm, my eyes darting around the room to assess my surroundings. In the center of the empty hall, a bizarre, glowing array had been drawn on the floor, its symbols unfamiliar and ominous. A wave of terror washed over me. I stared at Ji Yanli in disbelief. Have you completely lost your mind? You have a brilliant future ahead of you. You'll rise to the highest ranks of government. You'll have wealth and glory beyond your wildest dreams. Countless noble ladies in the capital would kill to marry you. Why are you so determined to drag me down with you into death? You don't even have an heir yet. If you die now, your family line will end with you. I racked my brain, trying to think of the thing Ji Yanli had cared about most in my past life, hoping to use it as leverage to calm him down, but Ji Yanli only tightened his grip on my wrists, his fingers digging into my flesh painfully. No, this isn't how it's supposed to be. I need to start over. With you. He began dragging me toward the center of the glowing array, step by step. The difference in our physical strength was too great. No matter how hard I struggled and resisted, I was forced closer and closer to the center of the strange symbols. As a brilliant white light began to emanate from the array, I closed my eyes in despair, waiting for death to come. #12. But the expected death never came. The back hall door was pushed open, and a shrill woman's voice rang out, "Song Ningwen, you shameless hussy, you're already betrothed, yet you still seduce other men." I opened my eyes. It was Jiang Yingxue. When she saw the scene in the hall was nothing like the tryst she'd imagined, she froze on the spot. Ji Yanli frowned slightly and shot back without hesitation. "You're the one who throws herself at men like a cheap whore." Jiang Yingxue froze again, her eyes reddening instantly. "Yanli, how can you say that to me? You clearly love me." Ji Yanli ignored her completely, his gaze fixed on the growing white light, and he gradually broke into a mad grin. "Ching ching. Hold on to me tight, we're going home." Hearing this, Jiang Yingxue stiffened all over. Then, her face ashen, she threw herself at Ji Yanli and clung to him. "Don't leave me behind. Yanli, please, don't abandon me. I have no one but you." Yanli, her pleas were cut short by a heart-wrenching scream of pain. Ji Yanli had kicked her hard in the stomach, seizing the chance when Ji Yanli was distracted. I sank my teeth into his hand as hard as I could. He howled in pain and loosened his grip. I sprinted for the door at once. Ji Yanli chased after me, shouting as he ran, "Ching ching, don't be afraid. We won't die, we'll just go back to the past." I didn't dare look back, running as fast as my legs could carry me. But before I reached the door, Ji Yanli caught me again, desperate. I lifted my foot and stomped down hard on his instep. This time, he gritted his teeth against the pain, holding me in an iron grip that wouldn't let go. Just as I was about to give up all hope, a cold, sharp male voice thundered from outside the door, infused with inner strength that made it sound incredibly authoritative. "Let her go." I looked up and saw Luo Xiao standing there, clad in black armor with a sword hanging at his waist. He looked like a god descending from the heavens, majestic and imposing. He didn't even draw his sword. With one powerful punch, he struck Ji Yanli's wrist. There was a sickening crack. Ji Yanli crumpled to the ground, howling in agony. Overwhelmed by the ecstasy of escaping death, I could no longer contain my emotions. I threw myself into Luo Xiao's arms and burst into tears of joy. Luo Xiao patted my back gently. When my emotions finally calmed, he drew his sword and pointed it at Jiang Yingxue. "I don't kill women. Get out of here before I change my mind." Jiang Yingxue hesitated for a moment, but her will to live prevailed. Clutching her aching stomach, she slunk away in disgrace. Left alone, Ji Yanli's face turned ashen, his eyes burning with hatred as he glared at Luo Xiao. "You short-lived fool, you'll be joining me in hell soon enough." Luo Xiao shot him a look of disdain, as if he were staring at a pile of filth. "Killing you would dirty my hands, but you dared to practice witchcraft in a royal temple. I will report this to the emperor personally." With that, Luo Xiao turned away from him, never sparing him another glance. He took my hand and led me out of the hall. ###13. By the time we left Dazhao Temple and returned to the capital, we learned the whole story. A few days earlier had been the anniversary of Ji Yanli's brother's death. Drunk and disoriented, Jiang Yingxue had mistaken Ji Yanli for her late husband and thrown herself at him, begging for intimacy. Afterward, Ji Yanli had fled to his study, his face as white as a sheet and his clothes disheveled. He'd even ordered his servants to lock Jiang Yingxue in her room, forbidding her from leaving. Originally, this was just a sordid family secret meant to be buried forever, but somehow, word had gotten out and now everyone in the capital knew. Our dynasty had always placed the utmost importance on ethics and morality. After this scandal broke, people looked at Ji Yanli with newfound revulsion. All the high-ranking officials and noble families who'd once been eager to marry their daughters to him quickly changed their minds. Even the emperor himself grew disgusted with his new top scholar. After telling me all this, Luo Shu grinned mischievously and asked, "Guess who was behind spreading the news?" It hit me like a bolt of lightning. "It was you." Luo Shu laughed and waved her hand modestly. "And my brother too." I stared at her in surprise. I'd never imagined that the seemingly cold and aloof Luo Xiao would resort to such tactics. Luo Shu seemed to read the confusion on my face and explained, "After I told my brother about how Ji Yanli had been pestering you non-stop, he was worried that Ji Yanli might stir up trouble and ruin your mood, so he sent 2 spies to keep an eye on the Ji mansion. He planned to recall them only after we'd successfully held your wedding and you'd left for the northern border. Who knew we'd get lucky?" The spies overheard the whole sordid story. When my brother heard their report, he just frowned. But I wasn't about to let that slide. How dare that scum set his sights on my future sister-in-law? I immediately spent a little money and had the story spread all over the capital. I grasped Luo Shu's hand tightly, my voice filled with gratitude. Words can't express how thankful I am.
I would never take a concubine. But on the anniversary of my brother's death, my sister-in-law got drunk. She mistook me for my brother, stripped off her clothes, and pressed herself against me. I knew I should have pushed her away, but perhaps it was because I had not slept with Qingqing in a long time, or perhaps I had also drunk too much that night, or maybe, deep down, my love for my sister-in-law had never truly died, it had only been waiting for a chance to reignite. In any case, we had spent the night together as husband and wife, for I had thought that we could keep this shameful secret between us, pretending that this absurd night had never happened. But to my horror, my sister-in-law soon discovered that she was pregnant. She had begged me tearfully to let her keep the child, but I had hardened my heart, forcing her to take medicine to abort the baby. After that, Yingxue could never have children again. She then begged me to adopt Qingqing's first child for her, to raise as her own. I agreed. I owed her a debt, and I also wanted to ensure that my brother's line would not die out. Besides, Qingqing and I were still young. We would have many more children together, 5. But I never imagined that this decision would become an unbreakable rift between Qingqing and me. We fought countless times over the issue of Jingyang, until one day, Qingqing donated half of her dowry to the Luo family army defending the northern border. When Yingxue heard the rumors circulating in the capital that Qingqing had once been betrothed to Luo Xiao since childhood, she had told me at once. The thought that my beloved wife had once been promised to another man filled me with a burning sense of shame. I deliberately ignored Qingqing, hoping that she would come to me, begging for my forgiveness. But night after night, I lay alone in my study, waiting for her, but she never came. Instead, it was Yingxue who knocked on my door again. I don't know if it was out of spite toward Qingqing, or if I truly could not resist the temptation. Either way, Yingxue and I became secret lovers. In public, she was my virtuous sister-in-law. In private, she was my forbidden lover. The thrill of this illicit relationship had ensnared me completely, dragging me deeper and deeper into the abyss. 6. Qingqing never conceived another child after that. So the issue of Jingyang became the constant heartache of her life. She fell ill at a young age. wasting away day by day. When the imperial physicians told me she had only days left to live, my heart was shattered into a million pieces. By then, I had already regretted everything. Jiang Yingxue could not read a single character. Beyond the physical pleasure we shared, we had nothing in common. She was nothing like Qingqing, who was well-educated, knowledgeable, and skilled in everything from playing the qin to painting and calligraphy. If I had not made that one terrible mistake, Qingqing and I could have grown old together in happiness. So I made a decision. I ordered a joint burial tomb for Qingqing and me, reserving a place for myself beside her. I owed her everything. Even in death, I would spend eternity making amends. But when Jiang Yingxue found out about my decision, she flew into a rage. She screamed that she had never been able to compete with Qingqing in life, and she refused to be inferior to her even in death. She even threatened me, saying that if I insisted on being buried with Qingqing, she would expose our affair to the entire world. Once again, I had chosen to save my own reputation, betraying Qingqing for the last time. 7. After Qingqing's death, Jingyang was completely unruly without her gentle guidance. In a desperate attempt to win his affection, Jiang Yingxue spoiled him rotten, indulging his every whim. But spoiling a child is the same as destroying him, sure enough. Jingyang eventually committed a crime so terrible that it shook the entire dynasty. After Luo Xiao died in battle, the entire Luo family army had knelt before the emperor, their tears of blood soaking the ground, begging him to investigate the traitor who had betrayed their general. The emperor was furious. Under his orders, a thorough investigation was launched, and it was discovered that enemy spies had long ago bribed Jingyang. They had tricked him into stealing documents from my study, making rubbings of everything he could find. Among those documents was the top-secret defense layout of the Northern Border Army. When I heard the news, I vomited a mouthful of blood. Everything was over. Jingyang was publicly executed by Linkai, a slow and painful death by 1,000 cuts. Jiang Yingxue was stripped of her status and reduced to the lowest form of slavery. Only I was spared. The emperor, remembering all the dirty deeds I had done for him over the years, had a death row prisoner who looked similar to me executed in my place. I changed my name, shaved my head, and became a monk at Dazhao Temple. I studied under an eminent monk, hoping that the teachings of Buddhism would ease the endless pain in my heart. I thought that this was how I would spend the rest of my life, trapped in a cycle of regret and suffering, until one day, I found an ancient secret technique hidden in a dusty old scripture in the temple library. It was a spell that could turn back time, allowing a person to return to a specific moment in the past. My heart, which had long been dead, suddenly began to beat again. If I could go back to the day I first met Qingqing, start over from the very beginning, if I could reject Jiang Yingxue's advances that night, if I could leave Jingyang in Qingqing's care, letting her raise him as her own, could I finally have the happy, perfect life I had always dreamed of? Qingqing was so kind and virtuous. She would have raised Jingyang to be a good man, I was sure of it. But when my master found out about my plan, he locked me in solitary confinement for a month. He warned me that this was a forbidden technique of Buddhism, and that casting it would require a terrible price. But I could not resist the temptation of a second chance. I secretly performed the forbidden ritual behind my master's back. I traded my next life, condemning myself to be reborn as an animal, for the chance to turn back time. On that day, I held Qingqing's bones in my arms and stepped into the center of the array. A brilliant white light filled the sky. My wish had finally come true. Qingqing, I'm coming for you. In this life, I, Ji Yanli, will never let you down.